Okay, all right, I am back. There is my camera yet again. I need to, I'll just leave it off because I don't have patience for this today. Okay, alrighty, folks. So the play and the plan. Let me go on live on TikTok. I am back, live on TikTok, live on YouTube. I'll be covering the first quarter of the final chapter today, and then I'll proceed the same way for the next 4 days until the book is complete. So I'll be ending up today on 536. Okay, before I begin, though, I will cover the um, notes, previous chapter. This is taken from thebestnotes.com. Hey, Mag. Hope you're doing well this school year for sure. And I miss you all so much. Oh man, I'm teaching the high school now, and it's like a whole different ball game. Like I do miss working with the younger kids, and I just wish you all well, like we used to. Toss the pain and the wishes and the wishing well. Still no luck, but oh well, I try, even though I know I'm gonna fail. It's all right. I think I did better than that, but negativity gets the better of me sometimes. Okay, all right. So chapter 10. And I won't be doing a full summary of chapter 10. I'll just be discussing um, the notes in the interest of time. And then I will be subdividing the chapter so that it's more manageable and easier to read because these chapters, as I've said before, are downright laborious. They're very challenging, they're very hard to make it. It is just a trial to make it through. Okay, so this is chapter 10 taken from thebestnotes.com. You can follow along if you so desire or decide. Okay, for 15 years, Homer and Candy keep their secret. They live by Candy's rules. Rules that allow them to share Angel, live together, and even have sex. Here we have another situation of an individual's rules taking precedence over society's rules of acceptable behavior. I believe it's because Candy, I don't know. I don't think she was actually married to Wally. I don't know why that would be outside societal rules, because I don't think Wally and Candy married. They do have like a very weird dynamic going on where they are pretending that their son is adopted in order to spare Wally's feelings, basically, and Olive. But like, there's nothing actually in the relationship itself that's like outside of the norm, the societal norm. Even Melanie, a woman who lives by her own unacceptable rules, finds Homer's behavior appalling. Melanie's disappointment at Homer's failure to claim his own son and live what in effect is a lie is immeasurable. Yeah, it's not entirely clear why Homer doesn't doesn't acknowledge Angel's relationship. Like I was saying, like Homer started off like such a good character, and then over time he just degraded. The hero he had once known became nothing more than a creep. Her ideal was shattered by someone else's personal set of rules. It's Melanie's visit that jars Homer out of his web of deceit. Melanie, unreasonable in so many ways, becomes Homer's voice of reason. And Irving talks about how the different characters live by their own sets of rules. Melanie is, I think, more traditional. She has a traditional view of marriage uh, that basically you can't mess around outside of the relationship. You can't sleep around. You are committed to each other. So she has a very traditional view of marriage. That's one of Melanie's rules. You don't play around. You don't mess around. And it seems like Homer plays by his own rules too. It's like it's okay to go after the girl as long as you want her. That's basically Homer. In this chapter, I'm speaking on chapter 10, we also find evidence, again, of a wait and see attitude. Once again, the issue of choice arises. Candy's wait and see attitude dictates their actions. They've waited for 15 years for the perfect time to tell Wally and Angel, and yet, it has still yet to come. Which reminds Homer that as long as abortion is legal, he does not have a choice. He is trained and capable, and as such, should be of use to these women who have no other alternative. Okay, here we go. Chapter 11. I will be ending today on 536. Cider House Rules. Breaking the rules. Melanie, who had hitchhiked from Bath to Ocean View. Here, let me see if I can skip ahead. There. She hitchhiked from Bath to Ocean View, hitchhiked back on the same day. She lost her zeal for apple picking. She retreated to plan another vacation, for to plead to return to work. Melanie went to the pizza bar where everyone went. She was also looking so woebegone that Lorna left the lout she was with at the bar and sat down in the booth opposite her. Yes, you found him, Lorna said. He's changed, Melanie said. She told Lorna the story. It wasn't for me that I felt so bad, Melanie said. I mean, I didn't really expect him to run away with me or anything like that. It was just him. He was really better than that, I thought. He was someone I thought was going to be a hero. I guess that's dumb, but that's what he looked like. Like he had hero stuff in him. He seemed so much better than everybody else. He was just fake. You don't know everything that's happened to him, Lorna said philosophically. She didn't know Homer Wells, but she had sympathy for sexual entanglements. Present sexual entanglement grew impatient at the bar, where he'd been waiting for her. He was a bum named Bob, and he came over to Millie's booth where the two women were holding hands. I guess what's the matter with Homer is that he's a man, Melanie observed. I only ever met one who didn't let his dong run his life. She met Dr. Larch, and he was an ether addict. Are you with me, or have you gone back to her? Bob asked Lorna, but he stared at Melanie. He was just talking. She was just being an old friend, Melanie said. I thought you was on vacation, Bob said to Melanie. Why don't you go somewhere there's cannibals? Beat off in a bucket, Melanie told him. Go try to fill a pail. Go drip in a teaspoon, she told him. Bob twisted her arm too sharply. He broke it. Bob broke her nose against the formic tabletop before some of the shipyard workers pulled him off her. Lorna took her friend to the hospital, and when they put the cast on her arm and it set her nose, they set it almost straight. Lorna took Melanie back to the women-only boarding house, where they both agreed they belonged together. Lorna moved her things back in while Melanie was convalescing. The swelling in her face went down after a few days, and her eyes turned from black to purplish green to yellow in about a week. The thing is, Melanie said, with her sore face against Lorna's tummy, with Lorna's hand stroking her hair. He was a boy, he had that kind of bravery that's really special. No one could make him just go along with what was going on. And now look at him, banging a cripple's wife, lying to his own son. I don't think he's talking about Homer. I don't think she's talking about Homer, right? At least I don't think so. It's disgusting, Lorna agreed. Why not forget it? When Melanie didn't answer her, Lorna asked, "How come you're not going to press charges against Bob?" "Suppose it works," Melanie asked. "Pardon me?" Lorna said. "Suppose they really put Bob in jail or sent him off somewheres," Melanie asked. "And when I'm all better, I won't be able to find him." "Oh," Lorna said. Homer Wells did not recognize the voice that spoke to him from the headlight's glare. "What you got in the bag, Homer?" asked Mr. Rose. It had been a long drive from the Carolinas, and Mr. Rose's old car creaked and popped with heat and with apparent pain. "It's nice to be working all night to make that house for me, Homer," he said. He stepped in front of his headlights. His black face was still hard to see, but Homer recognized the way he moved, so slowly but with a felt potential for moving so fast. "Mr. Rose," Homer said. "Mr. Wells," said Mr. Rose, smiling. They shook hands while Homer's heart calmed down. And he was still hiding in the cider house. Mr. Rose sensed that Homer wasn't alone. He was peering through the lit kitchen, looking into the shadow bunk when Candy walked in guiltily into the light. "Mrs. Worthington," said Mr. Rose. "Mr. Rose," Candy said, smiling, shaking his hand. "We're just in time," she said to Homer, poking him. "You just this minute got all the bed linen ready," she told Mr. Rose. But Mr. Rose observed that there was no colored truck. They had walked to the cider house. Had they carried all the blankets and sheets? "Just this minute we got it all folded up, I mean," Candy said. Homer Wells thought that Mr. Rose might have seen light in the Applemart office when he drove by. "We're working late in the office," Homer said, "and we remembered the linen was down here, all in a heap." Mr. Rose nodded and smiled. Then the baby cried. Candy jumped. "Where can Wally Bell bring in the daughter?" Mr. Rose explained as the young woman, about Angel's age, walked into the light with the baby in her arms. "I haven't seen you since you were a little girl," Homer Wells told the young woman, who looked at him blankly. It must have been an exhausting trip with a small child. "My daughter," Mr. Rose said in introduction. "And her daughter," he added. "Mrs. Worthington," said Mr. Rose, introducing her, "and Homer Wells." "Candy," Candy said, shaking the young woman's hand. "Homer," Homer said. He couldn't remember the daughter's name, so he asked her. A little startled, and looked at her father as if for clarification or advice. Nosegaichi. "Rose," Mr. Rose said. Everyone laughed. The daughter, too. The baby stopped crying and looked with wonder at laughter. "No, I mean your first name," said Homer Wells. "Rose is her first name," said Mr. Rose. "You already heard it." "Rose Rose?" Candy asked. My daughter smiled. She didn't look very sure. "Rose Rose," said Mr. Rose proudly. "Well, at least it's easy to remember." Everyone laughed again. Baby was cheering up, and Candy played with the little girl's fingers. "And what's her name?" Candy asked Rose Rose. This time the young woman answered for herself. "She don't have a name yet," Rose Rose replied. "We're still thinking it out," said Mr. Rose. "What a good idea," said Homer Wells, who knew that too many names were given frivolously or just temporarily. Or in the cases of John Wilbur and Wilbur Walsh, they were repeated without imagination. I mean, some names I'm sure are frivolous, but I wouldn't say temporarily. Cider House isn't really set up for a baby, Candy said to Rose Rose. "You could come up to the house. I may have some baby things you could use. There's even a playpen in the attic, isn't there, Homer?" "We don't need nothing," Mr. Rose said pleasantly. "Maybe she'll look another day." "I can sleep a whole day, I think," said Rose Rose prettily. "If you'd like," Candy told her. "Look after the baby for you so you could sleep." "We don't need nothing," Mr. Rose repeated. "Not today, anyway," he said, smiling. "Want a hand unpacking?" Homer asked him. "Not today, anyway," Mr. Rose said. "What's in the bag, Homer?" he asked when they all said good night and Homer and Candy were leaving. "Apples," Homer admitted. "That would be strange," said Mr. Rose. Homer unzipped the bag and showed him the apples. "The apple doctor?" Mr. Rose asked him. Homer almost said, "He knows," Homer said to Candy as they were walking back to the office. "Of course he knows," Candy said, "but what's it matter if we're stopping?" "I guess it doesn't matter," Homer said. "If you were prepared to tell Wally and Angel," she said, "I guess it won't be that hard to really do it." "After the harvest," he said. He took her hand, but when they came near the apple mart and the office light, they locked hands and walked their separate ways. "What's the bag for?" Candy asked him before she kissed him good night. It's for me, said Homer Wells. I think it's for me. He fell asleep marveling at what seemed to him to be the extreme control Mr. Rose had of his world. He would control the speed at which his daughter's daughter would be named, not to mention probably the name itself. Homer woke up near dawn, took a fountain pen from his night table, and used it to write, with a heavy finality, over the penciled number on the back of the photograph of the crew of opportunity books. With the dark ink, he followed the outline of the pencil. Permanency was reassuring, as if ink, like contract, was more binding than pencil. Couldn't have known that Candy was also awake. His stomach was upset. He was looking for some medicine in her and Wally's bathroom. She also found it unnecessary. Necessary, not unnecessary. She found it necessary to address the subject of the room. She also found it necessary to address the subject of the 270 times she and Homer had made love together since Wally had come home from war. Candy offered, not offered, sorry, honored. Finality of this number with less significance than Homer honored it, solidifying over the number in ink. He used the eraser to remove the evidence from the back of the photograph for teaching Homer how to swim. Then her stomach calmed and she was able to sleep. It astonished her how completely relaxed she was at the prospect. After the harvest, her life, as she'd gotten used to it, would be over. I think Irving just needs more impactful events in his novel. It's all just a bit too tedious. Homer Wells didn't try to go back to sleep. He knew his history on the subject of sleep. He knew there was no fighting history. He read an article in the New England Journal of Medicine about antibiotic therapy. He followed for many years the use of penicillin and streptomycin. He was less familiar with aureomycin and terramycin, but the antibiotics were easy to figure out. He read about the limited usage of neomycin. He made note of the fact that acromycin and tetracycline were the same. He wrote erythromycin in the margin of the article several times until he was sure he knew how to spell it. Dr. Larch had taught him that method of familiarizing himself with something new. Erythromycin, almost the apple doctor, as Mr. Rose had called him. He wrote that in the margin too, the apple doctor. Before he got out of bed, he wrote bed one again. In the morning, he sent Angel to the sidewalks. Inquire if Rose needed anything for the baby. That's when Angel fell in love. He was shy with girls his own age. Boys his own age and a little older always teased him about his name. He thought he was only Angel in Maine. He was even shy in advance of meeting girls, anticipating when he would have to tell them his name. In Hearts Rock and Hearts Haven, the prettier, more confident girls in his class ignored him. They were interested in older boys. The girls who appeared to him to like him were plain, sullen gossips who most enjoyed talking to other girls like themselves, about themselves, or about which boys had said what to whom. Every time Angel spoke to a girl, he knew his remarks were relayed that evening, over the telephone to every other neglected girl in his class. The following morning, they would all smirk at him, as if he'd said the same foolish thing to each of them. So he learned to keep quiet. He watched the older girls in school. He approved of the ones who did the least amount of talking to their girlfriends. It struck him as more mature, by which he meant that they were actually doing things they would not want their girlfriends to know. In 1950, girls Angel's age looked forward to dating. Boys Angel's age, as in other times, looked forward to doing things. Mr. Rose's daughter was not only the most exotic young woman Angel had ever seen. If she had a daughter, she must also have done things. It was cold and damp in the cider house in the mornings. When Angel arrived there, Rose was outside in the sun, washing Baby Rose in a bucket. Baby was splashing, and Rose was talking to her daughter. She didn't hear Angel walking up to her. Perhaps, since Angel had been brought up more by his father than his mother, Angel was predisposed to be attracted to a Madonna scene. Rose was only a few years older than Angel. She was so young that her maternity was startling. She was with her baby, her gestures and her expressions were womanly. She had a full womanly figure. She was a little taller than Angel. She had a round, boyish face. Good morning, Angel said, startling Baby Rose in the bucket. Rose wrapped her daughter in a towel and stood up. You must be Angel, she said shyly. A fine scar that sliced across the flange of one nostril and her upper lip. It made a nick in her gum, which Angel could see when she parted her lips. Later, he would see that the knife had stopped at the eye tooth and removed it, which accounted for her only partial smile. It explained to him that the wound had killed the root of the tooth and the tooth had fallen out later. He was so smitten when he first met Later, he would see the knife had stopped at the eye tooth and removed it, which accounted for her only partial smile. He explained to him that the wound had killed the root of the tooth and the tooth had fallen out later. She was so smitten when he first met her that even a scar was beautiful to him. It was her only apparent flaw. I guess he didn't care much for the romance between Angel and Rose Rose. I'm telling you, man, that's the problem with Irving's writing. It's so freaking tedious and boring. Like people just don't care. It's like old books. Like people just don't care at all. That's why we have so many ignorant people in the world because they just don't pick up the book. And it's not entirely fair. Some writers are just not very good. Like Irving wasn't. He was no F. Scott Fitzgerald. Okay, I'll tell you that. Like he was no Ernest Hemingway. Like the guy had kind of dry writing, even at the best of times. Like his writing is definitely dry. Like it's hard to get through. You got to really care about like you don't know. I would say like for you to really like this book, you have to care a lot about orphans. I guess like orphans, mothers, expectant mothers. Okay. I wonder if I could help you get anything for the baby, Angel said. She seemed to be teething. Rose Rose reported on her daughter. She's kind of cranky today. Mr. Rose came out the side of the house, and when he saw Angel, he waved and smiled. Then he walked over and put his arm around the boy. How you doing? He asked. You still growing, I think? I used to carry him on the top of my head, he told Rose Rose. Used to grab them apples I couldn't reach, Mr. Rose explained, punching Angel affectionately on the arm. I'm counting on growing a little more, Angel said, for Rose Rose's benefit. He wouldn't want her to think he had stopped growing. He wanted her to know that he would be taller than she one day. He wished he'd worn a shirt. It was not that he wasn't muscular, but somehow more grown up to wear a shirt. And he imagined that she might approve of his summer tan. And so he relaxed about not having a shirt. He put his hands in the hip pockets of his jeans, and he wished he'd worn his baseball cap. It was a Boston Red Sox cap, and he had to get hold of it first thing in the morning if he was going to wear it. Otherwise, Candy would wear it. They'd been meaning to buy another baseball cap for 2 summers now. Candy owed him one because she admitted to tearing one of his sweat holes in the cap and poking a pencil through it. He worked as a checker during harvest. She needed a pencil. This would be the second harvest that Angel would be a checker. Second summer that he got to drive one of the tractors that hauled the apples out of the orchards. Angel told his father that Rose Rose's baby was teething. He knew what to do. He sent Angel with Wally to town to buy some pacifiers. And then he sent Angel back to the cider house with a package of pacifiers and filtered bourbon. Well, he drank a very little bourbon from time to time. The bottle was 3/4 full. Like, I almost can't believe that we're so close to the end of this book. Like, I mean, it's no War and Peace, but I mean, still, it's like, it's a thick book. The bottle was 3/4 full. Homer showed Angel how to dab whiskey on Baby Rose's gums. It numbs the gums, Angel explained to Rose Rose. He dipped his pinky finger in the whiskey, then he stuck his finger in Baby Rose's tiny mouth. At first, he was afraid he'd gag the baby girl, whose eyes instantly grew large and watery to bourbon fumes. Then Baby Rose went to work on Angel's finger so ferociously that when he removed his finger to apply more bourbon, the baby cried to have the finger back. You're gonna make her drunk, Rose Rose warned. No, I won't, Angel assured her. Just putting her gums to sleep. Rose Rose examined the pacifiers. They were rubber nipples, like the nipple on a baby's bottle, but without the hole attached to a baby blue plastic ring that was too big to swallow. On with using a regular bottle nipple, Angel explained, was that the baby would keep sucking in air through the hole, and the air would give the baby burping fits on her gassy stomach. How come you know so much? Rose Rose asked Angel, smiling. How old are you? I'm almost 16, Angel said. How old are you? About your age, she told him. After noon, when Angel came back to the cider house to see how the teething was going, Baby Rose was not the only Rose with the pacifier stuck in her mouth. Mr. Rose was sitting on the cider house roof, and Angel could see, from a considerable distance because of the unreal baby blue hue of the plastic ring, he had a pacifier in his mouth. Are you teething too? Angel looked at him. Mr. Rose removed the pacifier from his mouth slowly, the way he did everything. I'm cutting out smoking, said Mr. Rose. You got a nipple in your mouth all day. Who needs a cigarette? He stuck the pacifier back in his mouth and grinned at Angel broadly. In the cider house, the baby Rose had fallen asleep with the pacifier in her mouth, and Angel surprised Rose as she was washing her hair. Yeah, because that's not confusing at all. She was bent over the kitchen sink with her back to him. He couldn't see her breasts, although she was bare from the waist up. Is that you? She asked ambiguously, keeping her back turned to him, but not jumping to cover herself. Sorry, Angel said, stepping back outside. I should have knocked. Then she jumped and covered herself, her hair still soapy. She must have thought it was her father. Checking on how the teething was going, Angel explained. It's going fine, Rose said. You a good doctor. You my hero for today. She was smiling her partial smile. A stream of bright suds from the shampoo ran around her neck and down her chest, over her arms, which she folded with a towel across her unseen breasts. Angel Wells, smiling, back so far away from the center house door that he bumped into the old car, which was parked close enough against the side house to appear to be holding up. He heard a tiny pebble come rolling down the center house roof, and it hit him on the head. Even though he had time to steal this, what kept away from Candy and now wore it at a casual angle, with the visor shading his forehead. The pebble hurt. He looked up at Mr. Rose, who had rolled the pebble in his direction. Perfect shot. Gotcha, said Mr. Rose, smiling. It was Rose who really gotten him. He just staggered back to the Apple Mart and into a fancy house as if he'd been struck by a boulder. Who was the baby's father? Angel Rose wondered. Where was he? Where was Mrs. Rose? Mr. Rose and his daughter all alone? Angel went to his room and began to compose a list of names, girls' names. He took some names he liked out of the dictionary, and then he added other names the dictionary had overlooked. How else do you impress a girl who hasn't been able to think of a name for her baby? Angel would have been a blessing to St. Cloud's, where the practice of naming the babies was a little worn out. Although Nurse Caroline had contributed her youthful energy to the nearly constant occasion, rather political choices had been met with some resistance. She was fond of Carl for Mark's, Eugene for Deb's. Everyone balked at Friedrich for Engels, and so she'd been reduced to Fred, which she didn't like. Nurse Angela had also complained about Norman for Thomas. It was a name like Wilbur. It was difficult to know if Angel Wells could have kept his passion for names intact when the task was almost a daily business. Finding a name for Rose's daughter was a devotion quite unexpected. It was typical of a boy's first love. Abby, Angel Wells, Alberta, Alexandra, Amanda, Amelia, Antoinette, Audrey, Laura, Rose, Angel said aloud. God, no, he said, plunging into the alphabet. The scar on the face of the young woman he loved was so extremely thin, so very fine. Angel imagined that if he could kiss that scar, he could make it disappear, and he began working his way through the bees. Bathsheba, Beatrice, Bernice, Bianca, Blanche, Bridget. Okay, pause. I have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. Last 5 pages of the chapter. Hear me. So I forgot to turn my mic back on. Dang it, dang it, dang it. But all zero of my viewers on YouTube, I'm sorry. 16 pages, though. I'll be tackling again tomorrow. Didn't miss much, just Rose, Mr. Rose, Rose, and Baby Rose. So there's like a bunch of roses. There's Vernon Lynch and Big Dot Taft, Homer Wells, Angel. Those are like the main characters of chapter 11. Wally, even though Wally's like really brief. And then I'll pick up tomorrow on page 536. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Donations, Venmo Storm Show. If you're watching on TikTok, don't forget to follow. Thanks for watching. Sleep tight. Have a good night. And as always, thanks for watching.